And welcome back to the Midday Show. We did it. We made it to 50. This is our 50th episode. We made it without killing each other. I still kind of like Mark. I like him a little less every day, but it's still tolerable. I don't know if I've ever done anything for 50 straight days. So this is like, I'm having a moment here.
I'm just happy you still like me a little. And what's impressive about, like, people think that was insulting. Like, you only liked me a little to begin with. So it's not like there's been a big erosion. It's just kind of hovering there. So, this is one of the longest relationships I've ever had.
I was waiting for it. You know what's funny is you and I have talked about like past relationships and stuff like that. And like I've dated a fair amount of people now, like at my age. And I used to joke with you, like, you just get to that like 3-month mark, and it just starts to like get sour and everything else. So I'm with you. Like the fact that like I can still get on here every day and talk with you, like it might be one of the healthiest relationships I've ever had.
Which I don't know if that's good or not, but I try to bring sunshine. That's all I try to do.
So 50th episode. It's the month of April is starting, and we have a new sponsor that's going to be joining on with us. Mark, if you want to talk about Weiss Markets and how they're going to be a part of the show with us.
Well, we're thrilled to have Weiss Markets. Obviously, here in North Central PA, we're almost to where we've had it for like 2 years, and we've just grown so much with lots of local sponsors, and you can go through the ones who, we announce these all the time, but you go through the website and the law firms of Lefley, Engelman and Yaw, and we've had things like Hans Cedardale and Cram Podiatry and Cars Trailers, and we can go on and on about all these local businesses that have really helped us grow to who we are. But we've had some big ones, and UPMC and PP&L and the Blaze Alexander family dealerships. And it just shows how much we've grown in viewership and in readership and in depth and of our coverage. And to bring in an establishment like Weiss Markets it's such a big boon to our company and what we do. And it's been great. And they are, local. It's one of those things. It's really cool. Blaze Alexander's dealerships was born in our region in North Central Pennsylvania. And what Weiss Markets was founded in Sunbury, and their headquarters are still in Sunbury. And even though they've spread and they have however many hundred stores in however many states, and they're still, when you go to the headquarters, it's right here in our region in Northumberland County. So we're happy to have them along, and they've got some things on the wheel, and we're gonna give some stuff away and have a lot of fun with them, and also it's crazy. And during this time that they were given COVID vaccines, they're like, when we start, like they've also been doing that for the community as well. So yeah.
This is before we move on. What is the thing that has surprised you doing this 50 days in a row? I had mentioned to you before, and a couple of people in our office, like I've never realized the grind. Like you think you're just going to get on and you're going to talk and like it's all, but it is like there is kind of a grind to it that I just never wrapped my head around, like every day coming on and talking. Is there anything that's kind of like surprised you about doing like 50 of these?
The part I used to do a radio show, and not in Baltimore. I did a real radio, and I was on for 2 hours every day. And so I'm very used to the days where you have lots of things to talk about. Like I see Kong versus Godzilla down there, and I'm ready. Like I can talk about, I haven't seen it yet, but I don't need to. But there are days that you come in and they're like, oh my God, there's nothing has happened in the world since yesterday at noon. So the thing that impresses me about this is your graphics get better and better every day. Jeff does all the graphics. He does all the stuff. And it's like, it looks so professional as opposed to some of the things that you just see on YouTube or whatever, that people just set up their camera and just go.
We are professional. Yeah. This is
What?
professional. This is professional.
I don't know if the talent is, but the appearance, we have people fooled.
Well, look good, talk good. Is that what, athletes say? Look good, play good. I guess look good, talk good.
They say that. And I've seen a lot of them that look good that don't play good, but that's the saying.
All right, let's go with you. Obviously, it's April Fool's Day. I'm not like a huge fan of April Fools. Like, I've never been a prankster. Like, I've never been somebody to like get into it. But you have an April Fool's Day. I think you might have a little bit of a history lesson for us.
Well, I wanted to look it up. Speaking of having people fooled, we'll start with April Fool's Day. And I said to you yesterday, like, dude, what is the history of it? I'd heard, and there's nobody really knows. One of the theories is the calendar, when it went from the Gregorian to the Julian or whatever, or one of those, that the start of the year used to be April 1st. They moved it to January 1st. And the people that either didn't get the news or didn't agree with it and that they kept celebrating the other day were known as the April Fools. That's one of the theories. One of the things I found out through this, and it's just crazy that I looked this up yesterday. Today is the 500th anniversary. It was April 1st, 1621, the 500th anniversary of the first treaty ever signed between the Pilgrims and the Native American. And supposedly that peace treaty lasted for 50 years, which is good. But I think somewhere in it, I don't know if there's a joke to it or whatever, but like the people, because obviously we signed these treaties with the Native Americans, and then we, murdered and raped and plundered and stole their land and did all these things. And somewhere in it, there's people that are like, well, we signed the treaty on April Fool's Day, so that everyone knows that doesn't really count. So, but I found that it's not. It's 500 years today. It wasn't 478. It wasn't 5 years. It was April 1st, 1621. So there you go. There's your little history lesson.
So my experience with April Fool's Day, I've never really been like hardcore pranked on April Fool's Day. I remember when I was like 10 or 11, I put a rubber band around the sink hose. So that way, when my mom went to turn on the faucet, it sprayed from the hose off to the right, and it got her soaked. And my mom was pissed. Like I can remember to this day, like her storming out. And God bless my mom. She filled up a glass of water, came out to the living room and threw it in my face and said, April Fool's Day. And since then, I have not done a single prank on April Fool's Day because that went so not the way I was hoping that it would go. So April Fool's Day for me is kind of, one of those things that I don't know if I can say I really participate in it.
Well, one of the things that's funny about it is we just talked about this because Roy Williams, the basketball coach at North Carolina, apparently just retired. And that was our first thing. And I remember being at work one day and I'd seen a Facebook post. And I worked with this dude's cousin who she had posted that me and my boyfriend just went to the Justice of the Peace yesterday and we got married. And he's like, no way. I was like, yeah. And then you're going through this thing of, is it real? I think it's real. It seems real. But you never know because it's on April Fool's Day. And when I got a text that said Roy Williams retired, I said it to you because you're a Carolina fan. You can see the thing hanging in the background. And the first thing you said was, it's April Fool's Day. Is that true? So we've all dealt with those too. That and this marriage, it was real. It didn't last till the next April Fool's Day, but for temporarily it was real.
Right.
But that was that's one of the other aspects of it. You just don't know what to believe.
No, I will be happy when it's over. So we're here to spin the wheel. Mark, how about you walk them through kind of our process, our sponsorships, and what they can look forward to here as we spin the wheel.
Well, now we have the Wise Wheel, and we still have our regular sponsors. We have Buffalo Wild Wings going to be on for a couple more days as they sponsor through March Madness, and March Madness is almost over. So we have a Buffalo Wild Wings gift card. We have the Break Room. Today, I think we have the Moon and Raven, and we also have 3 Wise gift cards. We have a $25 gift card, a $50 gift card, and a $100 gift card that you can use at any Wise Markets, anywhere that there is Wise Markets. And if you're a Midday show watcher and you live in like Spokane, then we'll hook you up with something else. But for all the people in our region, it is hard to be anywhere near us on the East Coast and not be near Wise Markets. So when I lived in Maryland, I shopped at Wise Markets. So that's just the way it is.
Yep. So the way
sorry, I didn't mention. You have to go to the Midday Show group. Go to Facebook. Join the Midday Show group. and you'll be automatically, your name will be put in and the name gets spit out every day. If your name gets spit out, you at least win a t-shirt. And then we got this wheel, we got a loser wheel. And so you'll win cool stuff, but you got to register at the Midday Show group.
That's right. Here we go. We're going with today. The random winner from our Facebook group, the Midday Show, is Kathy Yeakel. Yeakel? I'm going to say Yeakel.
I don't know. That's a good question. My first thought was Yeakel, but why would you spell Yeakel that way? But you never know. It's one of those. But Kathy, she knows who she is.
This one's for Kathy. Here we go.
I think you're going to win her today. I feel good for you. It's a new month. You're going to start out new. You're feeling like a winner, and you're not.
I'm not. I can't apologize. Once I apologize, no, maybe that's what we should put on the shirts. I can't apologize. I can't. If I apologize to one person, I'm going to have to apologize to them all. I can't do it.
Or should it say you can't apologize enough? Is that
that could be good too.
Let's get back to all these relationships that you had and all these. Is it because you couldn't apologize? Is that why?
I am like, I don't want to say I'm a narcissist, but like, I'm not great at apologizing. Like I have to fully understand what I'm apologizing for before I'll say it. Like, and that can be extremely annoying. Like, I have to know, I won't just say sorry because I want it to mean something. Like, I need to know why I'm sorry.
Well, but you should know why you're sorry because you screwed up.
So sometimes it takes me a little longer to say it because I'm a little slow and I got to figure out what I'm sorry for. I don't want to just say it to say it. So yeah, it's a problem. So new movie releases, obviously Kong versus Godzilla came out last night. It is kind of like, there is something about the idea of a King Kong movie, a Godzilla movie, the classics. There's history to them. And, I didn't love the last couple of King Kong movies. There was the Kong Skull Island. I didn't love the most recent Godzilla one, but there is still something to be said for the idea of like a classic monster movie when it comes out. It's being released on HBO Max. You do not have to go to the movie theaters to see it. It is getting a ton of like unexpected praise, and it's getting a ton of like fanfare because I don't know if it's because people are desperate or it's because the history of the franchises.
And that is a good question. Why is it? And one of the things I looked up was the runtime because wasn't Skull Island like 3 hours? It was Peter Jackson or whatever, and it was
long.
So I said to the guys, yes, because my son is like, we are going to see it. And I'm like, really? Why are we? And I'm just picturing a 2-hour and 50-minute movie where they fight for, 2 hours and 20 minutes of it. And apparently that's not it. My concern with it is, I think it is fun. I think people are, there's been so much, I don't want to say real life, that the last year has been just so much that people are welcoming this ridiculousness of, King Kong fighting Godzilla, and they're going to be jacked for it because you don't have to think, you don't have to believe, you don't have to understand, and how does this relate to me? And because it doesn't. My concern with this is we were having this discussion at the dinner table because, when you're there with your teenage kids, you want to have intelligent discussion. So, of course, we're talking about who would really win and who you should be rooting for. And my son, who's 14 years old, said he would root for Godzilla. And me and one of his sisters would not partake in the conversation because it was ridiculous. But his other sister, we just looked at each other and said, in what scenario in life do you not root for the big monkey? Like who is not rooting for, who picks the lizard over the monkey? And I'm concerned for the future of my son because I just don't see who would ever pick the lizard.
This is going to sound weird. Maybe Asian culture, like just because Godzilla has a bigger cause there. He's more into their movie history, more into their cinema history. That idea of Godzilla and what he represents. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, to not pick the primate makes not a ton of sense. So I get it. For me, what the fun part has been, obviously the conversation between monsters. is kind of like going back and seeing the clips of like the old classic movies. Like I remember walking into my grandfather's house and there'd be like one of the original King Kong movies. I remember seeing some of the cheesy Godzilla stuff from back in the day. And it's been neat to see some of it kind of pop back up on the YouTube feed. This is like the first time, and I'm curious of your opinion on this because we've talked about like remakes and reboots and sequels. This is one of the first times where like the reboot doesn't feel like as cliche. Like there's something about this where it's not just like another King Kong movie. It's not just another Godzilla movie. I don't know if it's because they've been building it up to this, but this one feels like fresher in a way. And I don't know how to explain that.
That's a good point. I think one of the things that plays into it is we all have these, you can get this little subtle like art house movie that you can watch at home. And then there's ones that like this is one of those like, hey, if I am going to go see it, it would be cooler to see it on a big screen. So I wonder if that has to, because how many people I haven't been to the movies since COVID hit. There's so many, and they're like, if I'm going to go back, this is the one I'm going back for. So I wonder if that has to play into it too. You talked about Asian culture, and I would think, is there anything in the history of the world that has killed more Asians than Godzilla? So like how could they root for this guy? Like this is, I don't know.
It's really interesting. I'm going to watch it. Eventually I'm going to see it on HBO Max. It'll probably be either tonight or this weekend. But eventually I'm going to check it out and kind of see what all the buzz is about. Cause people are giving it like good review. I'm kind of shocked at how well people are reviewing the movie.
Well, I read a little bit of and there is a story to it. It's not just,
they've used the previous 3 or 4 movies to build up to this one. So there is like, if you've seen the previous ones, there is some background, there is some leverage to be used there as far as story building and what you're trying to do.
I think too, and now this just came to me when you ask why is this getting so much buzz. I'm thinking a lot of the movies that we have seen that have come out, like I saw Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. I saw One Night in Miami. And even while we've lost the trip to the movie theater, has everything been so deep and like, I don't want to say not disappointing, but like just real life, like heavy. I guess that's the word I'm looking for. Has there been a heaviness to so much stuff that's happened in the last, and King Kong fighting Godzilla? That's that's the levity that we need. Not that it's a comedy, but you know what I'm saying.
No, it's just pure entertainment. I don't know how much of a message there really is in the movie, but it's the idea of 2 monsters, they're fighting each other. Get your popcorn, enjoy it.
And I think for all the single guys, when you find a girl that says, let's go see Kong versus Godzilla, that is a keeper right there.
Jennifer Love Hewitt is back in the news today. I should say actually this past week. And you brought up a good topic that I think you and I can go back and forth about.
I mean, this is we go from King Kong. We go from the silliness of a big monkey fighting a big fire breathing lizard to this.
Welcome to the Midday Show.
Welcome to the Midday Show. So there was a story about Jennifer Love Hewitt that came out the other day. They did it's the 20-year anniversary of a movie called Heartbreakers, which I'd never seen, but it was I've actually ordered it because I couldn't find it, and now I want to see it. But it was a great cast. Sigourney Weaver was her mother. Gene Hackman was in it. And Jennifer Love Hewitt was in her early 20s, 20, 21, 22, something like that. And her and her mom were grifters, and they were kind of con artists trying, and that's how they were going around and seducing men or whatever. And this is how they made their world. That's the movie Heartbreakers. And she just made a comment in an interview of, looking back 20 years ago, because it wasn't just a joke. Like it was Sigourney Weaver, it was Gene Hackman, it was this all-star cast.
Right.
And she talked about back at the time, the one dress, the one iconic dress, I guess. And she said when she first put it on, she thought it was just the top because it was so short. And she said, my clothes were so skimpy, they were coming out of Ziploc bags. And like at the time that they joked about it and everybody joked about it, she said, that a lot of the interviewers talked many of the questions were directed about her and her body and how she looked and her boobs and all that stuff. And she said at the time that she's like, well, I'm almost not wearing clothes in much of the movie. My outfits are so skimpy. So I just kind of laughed it off and went along with it because I thought, that's now 20 years later, she's 42. She's a mother. And she said she looks back at a lot of the interview questions and her thought is ew. And she finds it that it was not good. And she's like, I wish at the time that I would have stood up and said something. And I think that the question that I don't want to say the question, but where this becomes a very slippery slope is, now we get to revisionist history and we talk about cancel culture and things that were canceling things before that were just part of main society back then. This is different. This is kind of a joke and a talking point in a conversation. And there's an aspect that because 20 years later, Jennifer feels enlightened or looks back and says it was inappropriate, it doesn't really mean that the interviewer was out of line. Because at the time, if you tell a joke and everybody's kind of in on the joke and everybody laughs it off, but now it'd be like if I tell a joke to you right now and say, a priest, a rabbi, and a nun walk into a bar, and 20 years from now, you decide you want to be a priest, and you look back and say, well, that joke was inappropriate. It doesn't mean right now it is inappropriate because you laughed to it. So it's an interesting topic, and I just think that we have to be careful in society that just because something happened, people say, oh, that was inappropriate 20 years ago. It might be inappropriate to Jennifer. She might feel uncomfortable with it now, but it doesn't mean that the person asking the question was really out of line.
A lot to unpack there. I'll start with this, and I have kind of hinted at this to you before. I think that it just shows how important it is to speak up, because I think what happens a lot of time is it's important to recognize the situation you're in, and then it's important to also be willing to speak up and say something. I had given the example to you about when they were doing the Avengers movie, Scarlett Johansson was the only female during the interview junket, with Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans and all of them. And as the interviewer would go around, as he would get to Scarlett Johansson, he would ask her about her makeup, and then they'd go around the table, and then they'd get back to her, and they'd ask her about her tight outfits, and then they'd get back around. And finally, by the third time, Scarlett Johansson looked right at him and was like, if you don't ask me a real question this time, I'm leaving. You're asking everybody else at this table that's a male real questions, and you have yet to ask me a real question. And the point I'm making there is Scarlett Johansson recognized the situation that she was in. She clarified it. She spoke up about it. And so there was no, 20 years from now, there will be no debate how Scarlett Johansson felt in that moment. And if you are the interviewer in that moment, you know that you made a mistake. You know that you messed up and you need to be better than what you were. The tricky one about the Jennifer Love Hewitt situation is I don't know if she, and she admitted to it, she didn't recognize the situation as it was happening. It took her to have a daughter and to go through life and to recognize the scenario and what she was going through. And it's much harder to hold people accountable when that's the scenario versus when you're in the scenario and you recognize it right away. So what I took from this story, and what I tend to agree with you, is I don't think the interviewer was right with Jennifer Love Hewitt. But to your point, given the circumstance and given the time, how was he to know better? We can get into morals and those types of things. That's why it's so crucial, in Scarlett Johansson's case, that she recognized the situation she was in and spoke up about it in the moment, and just made it very clear to everyone in that room where the line was and that the line was being crossed.
And I can imagine one of the things that Jennifer had said in the interviews is it wasn't a joke of a movie. It was Sigourney Weaver. It was Gene Hackman. These were these incredibly professional people. And she was really proud of the work that she did. And she's because I was young and hot, she didn't say this, but this is what she was saying. Because she was young and hot and her wardrobe was so revealing, that's the part that she played, that she didn't get any credit for it. And I can understand the frustration in that. And you just play Scarlett Johansson's basically saying the same thing. His interview was basically you're hot, you're hot, you're hot. And she's well, let's talk about my professionalism. And I can understand that. The other thing that I'm I want to make clear is I'm not saying that Jennifer Love Hewitt can't have her epiphany and can't look back and say, hey, I regretted how that situation happened. And if it was, I would have done it differently. But it doesn't mean that the reporter is this horrible person for asking, people, there's not always a blatant villain, and there's not always, like if I tell a joke and I'm not trying to offend you, but you're offended by it, it doesn't mean I'm a horrible person. It just means I told a bad joke. And the other aspect too, which we talked about, there are just some horrible interviewers that have no idea what to ask. And so that's an element too. Maybe the guy wasn't trying to be, maybe he's just an idiot.
You're right. Well, what we're trying to, what society is trying to deal with now is a history record of everything. Because 20 years ago, if you told a joke, there was a good chance there was no recording of it. There was no film of it. There was no Twitter trail. There was no Facebook trail. But now, you can look back 10 years and it's not hard to find everything that you did or everything that you said or everything that you thought. And so as a society, to your point, when we have these epiphanies, what is the responsibility? Is the responsibility to dig up what was actually said or done 15 years ago and try to deal with it and handle it and confront it? Or is it one of those things where as a society, are we going to say, hey, it happened? And again, everything is black and white. Everything, the line is always moving. You and I talked about how my biggest concern with all this stuff is that people want to draw a line in the sand with no context, and here is the line. And you were either above it or below it. And I just vehemently disagree with that. It's all about the context. And in this case with Jennifer Love Hewitt, she didn't recognize it as it was happening. It's very clear the interviewer didn't recognize it as it was happening. So the line at that point clearly was very different than the line today. And that doesn't mean that he was right. It just simply means that we need context, and you have to understand where this is coming from. I don't think we can just dig back 20 years into everybody's past and just decide that that person should be condemned for it. It's going to be a long 2020s if we're just constantly digging back 20, 30 years of what everybody did and said and talk about how they should have done it differently.
Yeah, you use the word condemn. That's the right word to use here. As we do this, are we doing, if we use it for educational purposes and enlightenment, then that's good. If we just do it for condemnation, then that's not going to be good. But I mean, there are times that we look back at the whole, which I still have not seen, the Britney Spears documentary. You have seen it, correct?
I have seen it. Someone actually just mentioned Save Britney documentary does a great job of showing how outrageous the 90s and early 2000s were if you were a young woman celebrity.
And I think there was one, I don't want to get the wrong name, but I want to say Sarah Silverman. There was a comedian, however you say that, a female comedian. And there were jokes about it. And I also saw one, David Letterman had Lindsay Lohan on the show, and he was making rehab jokes. And there is a level, and some of the, they've taken a lot of heat. As long as you learn from it. Go ahead. Yeah,
the Letterman Lohan interview is hard to watch now. I don't know the last time. It is. And David Letterman, he does the new interviews now on Netflix. I don't know if you've seen him. He does He does really neat, hour-long interviews, and he gets the cream of the crop. He gets Obama, he had Kanye, he gets people that you're it's amazing to get to hear them talk for an hour with David Letterman. But watching that Letterman Lohan interview, it is and again, Letterman's a professional. This isn't just some beginner or some random interviewer for some paper in the middle of nowhere. It's David Letterman. And you're listening to him talk to Lindsay Lohan this way, and it is brutal. It is tough. And to your point, I think the best thing that you've said in 50 episodes that I completely agree with,
it only took 50.
It only took 50.
I knew I had a limit. I had a shelf life. I was I got 50 episodes.
Well, if you keep talking, I'm gonna forget what it was. Is your point of if we go back 20 years to learn from it, we're gonna be a lot better as a society. But if we go back 20 years to condemn people, it's gonna be a brutal 5 to 10 years because it's gonna be everybody. everyone, because society has just moved in a progressive direction that you can go back 20 and 30 years and you can find something about almost anyone. And David Letterman's a perfect example of that. If they would have found the Lohan interview and just condemned him, there would be none of this Netflix series. He would be gone from our lives. He wouldn't be getting to interview these incredible people and kind of digging into them. And I'm sure David Letterman has come out and he's actually talked about the Lohan interview. And he said, like, yeah, I was wrong. He's like, I didn't realize it at the time, but like I made a mistake. And if I could go back and do it again, like I would do it very differently. So the point that you made is very, very profound. We need to learn from this stuff instead of just condemning people from it.
Well, and I think too, we've all, no matter what profession, we don't have to be interviewers, but there's aspects where we know we were wrong. We know we said something stupid. And it's not just even like when you're fighting with your boyfriend or girlfriend and you're like, say something that feels good in the moment. The next day you're like, it wasn't really fair. Like we've all done stuff or said things that we thought were funny or we didn't. And sometimes, as you said, you even had to have someone explain it to you. You're like, this really bothered them because this is why. And you just learn from it. You become a better person for it. And we've all been, if you've never put your foot in your mouth, then you've probably never opened your mouth. So I don't know. We've got to a point in society where we so much want to vilify and, we're so divided. We've talked about politics of it that we just want to make the other side shut up. That if there's somebody out there, we're like, you made a mistake, you said something wrong, and you should never speak again. And we would have lost a lot of brilliant members of society if we would have done that.
No, I'm with you. 50 episodes. 50. We did it.
I feel a kinship here. There have been, I would just say, as you go through your history of girlfriends, there have been a lot of them that haven't lasted 50 episodes, and I feel honored.
No, thank you to everybody at NorthcentralPA.com. Thank you to Jerry, who does all the back work. Thank you to our editor, Carrie. Thank you to our editor, Emma. Also, thank you to all our writers, and thank you to our video professional, Phoebe. Thank you guys for all the advice, all your help with everything. And thank you just for everything that you guys do for NorthcentralPa.com. I'm sure I'll make another sappy speech when we get to 100, but we just wanted to make sure that we gave everybody a shout out. And thank you to Weiss Markets for becoming the official title sponsor of the Midday Show. We're excited to see where it heads, where it takes off.
And should I clarify now? You thank them for the advice they give us. We don't listen to any of it, but we still appreciate that they give it to us.
We're going to eventually.
If they ever give us anything good, we'll run with it. But so far, like all the best ideas come from us.
I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. Thanks for watching the Midday Show at NorthcentralPA.com. Thank you to Weiss Markets.
Go enjoy some baseball. It's opening day.
That's right.